Season 4 of Invincible comes out on March 18th, so I figured I'd make a video about what to expect in Season 4 of Invincible. In this video, I'll give a rough estimation of what issues of Invincible are likely to be adapted into this season, based off of previous seasons of the show, and I'll go issue by issue, give you the rundown on what happens, and at the end, predict what will happen in this season. I want to say before getting started that the timeline differences between the show and comics are major. Things that happened in season 1 of the show in the comics instead take place after events in season 2. For example, Robot cloning Rex, manipulating the Mauler twins, all that happens after Mark kills Angstrom in the comics. It's all a little confusing, so I'll be going off of major story beats, especially the ones that happen in the show's finales. Starting off, I'll give you some information so we can gauge how many issues are typically adapted into a season of Invincible. The first season starts with Mark getting his powers and ends with Mark's fight with Omni-Man. This same chain of events takes place over the course of roughly 12 to 14 issues in the comics. I say roughly because certain events such as the second invasion by the Flaxans happen after this fight. The timeline in the beginning of the show versus the beginning of the comics is substantially different, but over the course of the comics and the show, I think they'll coincide more. Overall, I think season 1 is equivalent to about the first 12 to 14 issues. In the beginning of season 2, we see Mark deal with the aftermath of his and his father's fight, and then the season ends with Angstrom Levy's attack on Mark's family. From issue 14 to when Mark kills Angstrom in issue 33, that means that season 1 is roughly 14 issues, and season 2 is roughly 19 issues. Season 3 covers way more of the comics than the 2 seasons before it, but the big takeaway is that Mark's fight with Conquest and his line about not hesitating to kill anyone that might hurt his family, all of that concludes in issue 65, meaning season 3 covered roughly 32 issues. Now for the breakdown. Issue 66 starts off with Nolan's reveal to Alan just after their escape from the Viltrumite prison. He says that there are less than 50 full-blooded Viltrumites left in the universe. The next few pages feature Nolan detailing how a weapon called the Scourge virus was crafted by the Empire's enemies. It killed many Viltrumites, most of them, and those who survived discovered that there was a short period of time after the virus had left their system where their strength and invulnerability had been greatly diminished. He continues to say that the virus ravaged Viltrum for decades. 99.9% of the population was eliminated, and the Empire was on the brink of extinction. Nolan says that leaders devised plans for as few as one Viltrumite to conquer planets on their own. Nolan's presence on Earth was one such plan. He talks about how crossbreeding with alien races had long been forbidden, but was now encouraged. He says that human DNA is almost 100% compatible with Viltrumite DNA. Earth's fate was to become a breeding camp for Viltrum. The last thing he says is that the ring around Viltrum is constructed of the hundreds of thousands of Viltrumites killed by the Scourge virus. Nolan demands to meet with the coalition of planets, and so they travel to Telescria. Nolan lives here with Alan for the time being. Nolan meets Thetis, tells him all the things that he told Alan, and Thetis reveals that he is also a Viltrumite. They have a quick conversation about some kind of Viltrumite ritual where you pull off your beard. I don't know. They bond over their shared experience of betraying Viltrum, and Thetis charges them with exploring the galaxy and collecting the weapons that Nolan wrote about in his books. The next issue or two are Nolan and Alan finding Space Racer, Battle Beast, and the Ragnars, and at the end of issue 67, Thetis reveals his DNA was the DNA used to make the Scourge virus. He also says that he is making another improved strain that will circumvent any immunity Viltrumites may have developed to the previous one. He tells Nolan he will not hesitate to release the virus, even if the virus means extinction for his people. Lastly, Nolan and Alan are sent to Earth to retrieve Mark and begin the Viltrumite War. In issue 68, Invincible meets Dinosaurus, has dinner with Eve and her parents, and Conquest escapes Cecil's prison. The second Sequid invasion begins, and Eve is revealed to be pregnant. In issue 69, we are introduced to Universa, a powerful alien queen who needs huge amounts of power to save her planet. At the same exact time, the Sequids begin their invasion of Earth. Eve and Invincible are called to a power plant where Universa is attacking. Mark offers to just give her the power after she explains herself. She refuses and said she would just end up draining the entire planet. The Guardians of the Globe engage with the Sequids, while Eve and Mark fight Universa. Eve's powers malfunction here because of her pregnancy, and just before Universa presumably kills her, Mark takes the hit and grabs Universa's staff, knocking him out. Eve punches Universa, knocking her out as well. And at the end of the issue, Cecil tells Mark they need him to help fight the Sequids, as the Guardians have been entirely overrun. Issue 70 sees Mark fighting the Sequids, and then making the decision to kill Russ Livingston, thereby ending the Sequid invasion. He kills him in front of the Guardians, and everyone's really shocked. This is a big moment. The issue ends with Cecil teleporting into his room where he has to talk. The next issue is called Invincible Returns 1. It shows us Cecil attempting to manipulate Mark after he clearly second guesses his decision to kill Russ Livingston. Donald expresses his concerns about this, but Cecil brushes it off, and at the same time refusing Donald's pleas to tell Mark about Conquest's escape. Conquest returns to his leader, and this is one of the biggest moments in the entire comics, and you've probably seen this in the trailer. But essentially what happens is he comes back to his leader. He's called Grand Regent Thrag, the leader of the Viltrumites, and he explains that he underestimated Mark, but Thrag doesn't care. He says he has learned of a team sent to retrieve Mark from Earth, obviously that's Alan and Nolan, and bring him into direct conflict with Viltrum. This is where we get the line seen in the trailer for Season 4, "Leave no one alive." Continuing on, Eve tells William about her pregnancy, expressing her lack of preparedness for a child. Oliver and Debbie have a conversation where he shows how quickly he's aging. He kind of asks her about her relationship with Paul, and it's a whole back and forth. Mark nearly kills Titan after the Order attacks again. I'm not exactly sure what happens here, but I'm pretty sure Titan was lying to Mark, and the whole reason the Order attacked again has to do with Titan. Mark goes to see Art and questions whether he is a good person after what he did to Russ. Art reassures him and suggests a costume change. Mark finally goes back to his iconic yellow suit here. One of the best moments in the entire comics, I must say. And at this point, right after this, Nolan and Alan arrive on Earth and tell Mark he's needed and he must go to war. And you probably also saw that moment in the trailer as well. Issue 71 starts with another invasion by the Flaxans, and Robot comes to the conclusion these attacks will never stop, not unless they go into the Flaxan dimension and fight on their own turf. Robot commands everyone to follow, but Monster Girl is the only one who listens. Nolan and Alan search for and find Tech Jacket, and for the first time in a while, he meets Debbie. They talk for some time, and Nolan apologizes profusely for everything he's done. Nolan sees Oliver again and comes to the conclusion that he could invite him along with them so that they could catch up and, talk to each other for the first time in months. Eve and Mark say their goodbyes, but Eve still can't muster up the courage to tell Mark about the baby. And finally, the group leaves Earth, but is attacked on the way to Telescria. The attackers are Conquest and two other Viltrumites. The issue ends with Mark being in total shock at seeing Conquest again. The next issues, 72 and 73, feature Mark, Nolan, and Oliver battling the Viltrumites. All three Viltrumites ultimately meet their end, but Conquest manages to critically injure Mark. Nolan and Oliver stay by Mark's side as he heals through his injuries. Meanwhile, Thetis, under the impression that they've all perished fighting the Viltrumites, officially begins the war. Alan, Tech Jacket, Battle Beast, and Space Racer fight on the front lines against the Viltrumites, and we got a nice little montage panel side by side with images of Nolan and Oliver talking, saying with Mark. The issue ends with Mark speaking in his sleep, nearly conscious, and episode 4, in my opinion, will likely consist of all of the things mentioned here. There is also the reveal that Thrag has a mole inside the Coalition, explaining how he knew about Mark's retrieval. Real quick, given the release schedule for Season 4, specifically the first 3 episodes releasing at once on March 18th, I think the end of issue 72, where Mark ultimately kills Conquest for good but is critically injured, I think that will be the end of episode 3. It would be a good, 3 episodes to introduce everything for the season, and it would be a good cliffhanger to get everyone hooked for the next episode. Back to the breakdown. Issue 74 continues the Viltrumite War, and Mark wakes from his coma. Telescria comes under attack by the Viltrumites. Mark, Nolan, and Oliver make it just in time to drive them back. The Viltrumites leave and retreat to Viltrum. Issue 75 begins with Thetis explaining that all planets under Viltrumite rule have been entirely abandoned. We get a shot of the team, and they're sent to Viltrum, the suspected hiding place of the Viltrumites. And this is where the fighting begins, and immediately Thrag tears off Oliver's arm, nearly killing him. Mark is enraged, thinking that Thrag has just killed him. He yells that he's killed Conquest, and now he will kill Thrag. The other Viltrumites are shocked to hear that he killed Conquest. Thetis tackles Mark away from Thrag, saying that they have only one shot to complete their plan. Thetis, Mark, and Nolan fly through Viltrum while Space Racer fires his ray gun through the planet. They fly through the planet, directly through the planet's core and out the other side, and the planet explodes into a giant ball of fire. After, Thetis demands that the Viltrumites surrender, but Thrag is so enraged that he decapitates Thetis and declares there is nothing left but revenge. Issue 76 begins with Nolan and Mark fighting Thrag. Mark asks how they can beat him, to which Nolan responds that they just can't. He explains how Thrag was trained from birth to be the leader of Viltrum, and by extension, the strongest among them. Thrag knocks Mark out after injuring Nolan badly. When he wakes up, Alan has been declared the new leader of the Coalition. His father is alive and well, and Oliver's injuries are being treated, along with a prosthetic arm being crafted for him by Telescria's doctors. Alan tells Mark that after the battle for Viltrum, the Viltrumites have completely vanished. They can't find them anywhere in their galaxy, and Mark comes to the conclusion that they have fled to Earth. In my personal opinion, I think this is where the season will end. It's a huge reveal, it has major implications, and given the pace of the story so far, I think it would make sense. I think the timeline might be shuffled around a bit. Like, for example, Universa might have her storyline concluded before Mark leaves Earth. I think there will be more stuff surrounding Debbie and Nolan prior to his departure, but overall, this is probably where the season would end. If you made it this far, thanks for watching. This is my first real YouTube video, and I've put lots of effort into it. If you want to see more like this, whether it's about Invincible or something else, please consider subscribing. And lastly, have a good day.